Captain Alina Reyes gripped the command chair as the Defiant shuddered violently, emergency lights bathing the bridge in crimson. The quantum jump had been rough, an understatement considering they'd initiated it while under heavy fire. "Damage report," she called, her voice steady despite the chaos. The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, hands dancing across holographic interfaces. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, her XO, appeared at her side, face streaked with sweat. "Engine deck took a direct hit before the jump. Quantum drive is overheating and shields are fluctuating between 20 and 30%. We've got fires on decks 3 and 7. Reyes nodded, processing. "Casualties. 12 injured, 3 critical. Lieutenant Chen has them stabilized in medical." The main view screen flickered back to life, showing their surroundings. A dense asteroid field stretching as far as sensors could detect. Perfect for hiding, terrible for navigation. The Defiant drifted between 2 massive rocks, its normally gleaming hull now scorched and dented. "Atlas, any sign of pursuit?" Reyes asked, addressing the ship's artificial intelligence. A holographic figure materialized beside her chair, a translucent blue human shape with constantly shifting code streaming through its form. "Negative, Captain. However, our quantum signature would be traceable. I estimate Concordat forces will locate this general region within 12 hours. Reyes stood, facing her bridge crew. Each face told a story. Determination mixed with fear, confusion with resolve. They were the best Earth had to offer, hand-picked for humanity's first diplomatic mission to an advanced alien alliance. Nobody had expected it to become a fight for survival. "Listen up," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent bridge. "I know this isn't the mission we trained for. But right now, we're all that stands between Earth and a civilization that decided we're too unpredictable to live." Navigator Okoro looked up from his station. "Captain, why did they attack without provocation? We followed first contact protocols exactly." Reyes gestured to Communications Officer Lai. "Show them what you found." Lai tapped her console, bringing up intercepted Concordat transmissions. "They've been monitoring our broadcasts for decades, but they've completely misinterpreted what they saw." The screen showed fragments of Earth entertainment. Action movies, sports competitions, political debates, all labeled in alien script as evidence of dangerous instability. "They're afraid of us," Reyes continued, "not because of our technology, which they clearly outmatch, but because we're unpredictable. The Concordat values order above all else. To them, we're chaos incarnate." Chief Engineer Yamamoto entered the bridge, his uniform stained with coolant fluid. "Captain, the quantum drive won't survive another jump without major repairs. We're stranded here." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. 20 light years from Earth, outgunned and damaged, with no way to warn home about the threat. "Options?" Reyes asked, looking at her senior staff. Security Chief Dias stepped forward. "We fight back. Hit and run tactics. We're smaller and they're overconfident." Yamamoto shook his head. "With what? Our conventional weapons barely scratch their shields." "Then we make new weapons," Dias insisted. "You said yourself their technology is all standardized, built on predictable patterns." Reyes studied the tactical display showing the asteroid field. A plan began forming in her mind, reckless, desperate, and exactly what the Concordat wouldn't expect. "Atlas, display Concordat fleet formations from our sensor logs," she ordered. The AI complied, showing holographic recreations of the alien fleet's perfect, symmetrical attack patterns. "Look at how they move," Reyes said, tracing patterns in the air. Every maneuver mathematically optimized. No wasted motion, no improvisation. Weapons Officer Parker leaned forward. "They fight like machines." "Exactly," Reyes nodded. "And what beats a machine?" "Human unpredictability," Yamamoto answered, understanding dawning on his face. "We could modify our remaining torpedoes to emit random energy signatures and use the asteroid field to our advantage. Diaz added, eyes lighting up. Classic guerrilla tactics. Reyes turned to face the view screen, watching the silent dance of asteroids against the backdrop of distant stars. Somewhere out there, the Concordat fleet was reorganizing, preparing to hunt down the lone human vessel that had escaped their perfect ambush. "They expect us to run and hide," she said quietly. "They expect us to be frightened prey. Let's show them why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy when cornered." She turned back to her crew, determination hardening her features. "We're going to take the fight to them, and we're going to win." Commander Zurthal paced the command deck of the Eternal Justice, forearms clasped behind his back in what his subordinates recognized as a dangerous posture. The massive view screen displayed search patterns of his divided fleet, each ship following optimal search algorithms through the asteroid field. "Explain again," he demanded, copper-toned skin reflecting the blue light of holographic displays, how a primitive vessel with inferior technology evaded the most advanced fleet in the Concordat. Science Officer Vexra approached cautiously, data tablet extended. "Commander, analysis of the human vessel's escape trajectory reveals inconsistencies. Meaning, their quantum jump signature didn't match any known pattern. It was erratic, almost as if they deliberately introduced randomness into their navigation system." Zurthal's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair remained fixed on the tactical display. No rational species would introduce chaos into navigation. The risk of materialization inside solid matter would be unacceptable to any logical mind. Vexra finished. Yet they survived. The commander turned to his tactical officer. "Show me their entertainment broadcasts again, the ones with the simulated combat." The view screen shifted to display intercepted Earth transmissions, humans engaged in what the Concordat initially classified as combat training, before realizing they were fictional narratives. The images showed humans employing strategies no Concordat tactical computer would ever recommend, sacrificing optimal positioning for surprise, abandoning superior resources to create misdirection. "They embrace chaos as strategy," Zurthal murmured. "A developmental dead end that should have been eliminated by natural selection." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krenlo, approached with a real-time update. 2 scout vessels have failed to report at scheduled intervals. Last known position was Sector 7 of the asteroid field. Zurthal's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Impossible. 2 vessels. Asteroid collisions. Negative. Their emergency beacons should have activated automatically." The commander's posture stiffened. "The human vessel couldn't have disabled 2 of our ships. Their weapons were ineffective against our shields." "Perhaps," Krenlo suggested, "they found another way." Aboard the Defiant, Captain Rice studied holographic projections of the 2 disabled Concordat scout ships. Chief Engineer Yamamoto stood beside her, dark circles under his eyes after 36 hours without sleep. "The infiltration packages worked perfectly," he explained, highlighting sections of the alien vessels with gesture commands. "Their systems are now broadcasting false status reports to the main fleet while actually being completely disabled." Reyes nodded appreciatively. "And the crews? Contained in their hibernation chambers. We triggered their emergency protocols remotely. They're unconscious but unharmed." Security Chief Diaz entered the war room, still wearing the adaptive armor from the boarding mission. She placed a small crystalline device on the holotable. "Their complete tactical database. Atlas is decrypting it now." The ship's AI materialized, its blue form more static-filled than usual as it dedicated processing power to the alien data. Fascinating architecture. The Concordat fleet operates on a hive mind principle. All tactical decisions flow from centralized command algorithms. "Meaning they all think alike," Reyes observed. "Precisely, Captain. Their strength is perfect coordination, but it creates a critical vulnerability: predictability." Yamamoto manipulated the holographic display, showing the disabled scout ships. "We've repurposed their communication arrays to broadcast false sensor readings to the rest of the fleet. Phantom ships," Rice smiled. making them think we're everywhere at once. Diaz leaned forward. "Captain, the tactical data confirms what we suspected. The Concordat has encountered other unpredictable species before. Their standard protocol is immediate elimination." A heavy silence fell over the war room. "They've done this before," Rice said quietly. "How many civilizations have they wiped out simply for being different?" Atlas projected statistical probabilities. "Based on historical records in their database, I estimate 17 species have been deemed chaotically incompatible with Concordat order." Rice straightened, a new determination hardening her features. "Then we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that thinks differently." The ship's intercom chimed. "Captain," Navigator Okoro's voice came through. "We've detected a Concordat heavy cruiser entering our sensor range. They're sweeping the area with deep scans. How long until they find us?" Rice asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Their scanning pattern is sequential and thorough." Yamamoto and Diaz exchanged glances. "Too soon," the engineer said. "We need another day to finish modifying our weapon systems." Rice studied the tactical display, watching the approaching Concordat cruiser, nearly 5 times the size of the Defiant, its perfect symmetrical design reflecting the Concordat's obsession with order. "Then we give ourselves another day," she said, formulating a plan. "If they're searching in a predictable pattern, we can use that against them. Atlas, calculate their exact scan sequence, and plot a course that keeps us perpetually in their blind spot." "That would require precision maneuvering within 50 meters of their hull," the AI cautioned. "One miscalculation would be fatal." "Yes," Rice finished. "But they'd never expect us to hide in plain sight. It's too irrational, too risky." "Which is exactly why it might work," Diaz said, understanding dawning. Rice nodded, already moving toward the bridge. "Prepare for close-quarters stealth maneuvering. We're going hunting in the shadow of the hunter." The Defiant drifted silently, its hull mere meters from the massive Concordat cruiser. Through the viewport, Captain Rice could see the alien vessel's intricate surface, geometric patterns etched into metal unlike anything produced on Earth. The cruiser's scanning beams swept methodically through the asteroid field, passing above and below the human ship, but never directly at it. Maintaining position in sensor blind spot, Navigator Okoro whispered, though there was no need for silence in space. His hands moved delicately over the controls, making micro-adjustments to keep the Defiant perfectly positioned in the narrow cone of sensor shadow beneath the cruiser's hull. Rice checked the chronometer. 18 hours of this nerve-wracking dance, matching the cruiser's every move while remaining undetected. The bridge crew worked in shifts, but she had remained unwilling to relinquish command during such a precarious operation. "Captain," Communications Officer Lai called softly, "I'm intercepting internal communications from the cruiser. Atlas is translating in real time." The AI's holographic form appeared, its voice lowered to match the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. "They're reporting negative results from this search grid. Commander Zurithal is ordering them to proceed to the next sector." "Good," Rice nodded. "That gives us the opening we need." Status of Project Chaos. Chief Yamamoto reports final calibrations are complete. Atlas responded. Weapon modifications are ready for field testing. Rice activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for separation from shadow position. Tactical teams to stations." Below in engineering, Yamamoto led a team of technicians making final adjustments to what had once been standard-issue torpedoes. Now the weapons barely resembled their original forms, their casings opened, circuitry exposed, and new components grafted onto their guidance systems. "The beauty of it is simplicity," he explained to his team as they worked. Concordat systems are built on perfect mathematical harmony, every signal perfectly timed, every frequency precisely calibrated. They've engineered out all noise, all randomness. Lieutenant Torres, his assistant, nodded as she sealed the modified guidance system. "So we give them noise." "Exactly. These torpedoes won't even damage their ships. They don't need to. They'll just introduce cascading errors into their systems by broadcasting contradictory signals on all frequencies simultaneously. Torres smiled, like shouting nonsense in a library. More like speaking every language at once in a room full of translators, Yamamoto corrected. Their systems will try to make sense of it all, and fail spectacularly. The intercom chimed. Engineering, this is the captain. The cruiser is moving off. Are we ready? Yamamoto pressed the response button. Ready, Captain. Project Chaos is online. On the bridge, Rise watched as the Concordat cruiser began to move away, its massive engines glowing with perfect blue symmetry. Begin separation, she ordered. Thrusters only, minimal power signature. The Defiant edged away from its hiding place, maintaining the asteroid field as backdrop to mask its outline from long-range sensors. Target locked, Weapons Officer Parker reported. Chaos torpedo ready. Rise hesitated for just a moment. This would be their first offensive action, crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Captain, Parker prompted. The Concordat fired first. Rise reminded herself aloud. They've destroyed other species for the crime of thinking differently. We're defending not just humanity, but the right of all life to evolve in its own way. She nodded decisively. Launch torpedo. The modified weapon streaked silently through space, its engine reconfigured to emit no visible exhaust. On the view screen, they watched it approach the cruiser's aft section, attaching to the hull near what APLS had identified as a primary communication node. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, the cruiser's lights flickered. Its perfect engine glow stuttered, turned purple, then green, then back to blue. It's working, Diaz whispered. The cruiser began to move erratically, its trajectory no longer the perfectly straight line of Concordat efficiency, but a wobbling path that became increasingly unstable. They're sending distress signals, Lai reported, monitoring communications. But the signals make no sense. Their language is breaking down into random phonemes as our torpedo corrupts their communication protocols. No response from other Concordat vessels. Atlas added. They appear to be treating the distress call as an error or malfunction, rather than a genuine emergency. Rise allowed herself a small smile. Perfect. The Concordat's greatest strength, their unified systems, is now their greatest weakness. They can't conceive of an attack that targets their fundamental assumptions about order. The view screen showed the cruiser powering down systems, likely attempting to purge whatever error had infected them. They would eventually recover, but not before the Defiant was long gone. Plot a course to our next target, Rise ordered. The hunting has just begun. Lieutenants Sarah Chen moved efficiently through the Defiant's medical bay, checking vital signs on her patients. 8 crew members occupied beds, injuries ranging from plasma burns to fractures sustained during the increasingly aggressive maneuvers the ship had been performing. The medical officer paused beside Ensign Rodriguez, adjusting his pain medication before moving to the next bed. How are they doing? Captain Rise asked, entering the medical bay quietly. Chen startled slightly, then composed herself. Stable. Rodriguez and Petrov will need another day before returning to duty. The others should be cleared by morning. She gestured toward a private area. Walk with me, Captain. They moved to Chen's office, the door sliding shut behind them. The medical officer's professional composure faltered. Alina, we can't keep this up, she said, dropping formality. I've treated 37 injuries in 5 days. The crew is exhausted. Some haven't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since this began. Rise sank into a chair, the weight of command evident in her posture. I know, Sarah, but what choice do we have? I'm not suggesting surrender, Chen clarified, leaning against her desk. I'm concerned about our tactics. Each engagement becomes more aggressive. The Chaos torpedo concept was brilliant. Minimal damage, maximum disruption. But this asteroid collision plan could cause actual casualties, Rice finished. I've thought about that. Extensively. Chen studied her old friend. They'd served together for 8 years, since the Defiant was still a prototype on Earth's drawing boards. This isn't like you, Elena. You've always found solutions that minimize harm. The stakes have changed, Rise said quietly. Atlas translated more of their tactical database. The Concordat has eliminated 17 species they deemed chaotic influences in the past millennium alone. Entire civilizations gone. Chen's eyes widened. Genocide. Based on what? Cultural differences. Based on unpredictability. The Concordat values perfect order above all else. Species that embrace creativity, randomness, individuality. They see them as threats to cosmic harmony. Rais stood, pacing the small office. If they reach Earth, they won't stop with the Defiant. They'll sterilize the entire planet. A long silence hung between them as Chen processed this information. I still don't like it, the doctor finally said, but I understand the necessity. She straightened, doctor mode returning. At least let me examine you before this boarding mission. You've been showing signs of fatigue. No time, Rise replied, checking her chronometer. The team deploys in 30 minutes. 10 minutes, Chen insisted, or I declare you medically unfit for command. Rise smiled tiredly. That's mutiny, doctor. It's medicine. And my duty. In his private chamber aboard the Eternal Justice, Commander Zuerthal reviewed holographic projections of the disabled Concordat vessels. His exoskeleton clicked softly as he moved around the displays, 4 eyes focusing independently on different aspects of the damage. Unprecedented, he muttered to himself. Completely unprecedented. The door chimed, and Sub-Commander Krenlo entered, mandibles tight with anxiety. Commander, the Council is demanding answers. 7 ships disabled in less than a solar cycle. They're questioning my competence, Zyrthal finished calmly. Unaware. With respect, Commander, our tactics are failing. These humans employ methods that defy all strategic models. Zyrthal turned all 4 eyes toward his subordinate. You believe you could do better. Krenlo hesitated, sensing danger. I merely suggest we consider unorthodox responses. Unorthodox, Zyrthal repeated, tasting the alien concept. You propose we fight chaos with chaos. Become like them. Not exactly, Krenlo clarified hastily. But our perfect formations, our standardized responses, they're anticipating them. Perhaps more. Flexibility is required. The commander stared at his second-in-command for a long moment. In 900 years of service, he had never deviated from Concordat tactical doctrine. The very suggestion felt like heresy. Show me, he finally said. Krenlo approached the holographic display, manipulating the projected fleet formations into scattered, asymmetrical patterns. Randomized patrol routes, varying communications frequencies, unpredictable scan patterns. Deliberate inefficiency, Zyrthal observed, mandibles clicking in disapproval. Tactical adaptation, Krenlo countered carefully. Before the commander could respond, the chamber's alert system pulsed with urgent light. Report, Zyrthal commanded, activating the communication channel. Commander, came the tactical officer's voice. We're detecting unusual energy readings throughout the asteroid field. Multiple points showing thermal signatures consistent with explosive devices. Zyrthal and Krenlo exchanged glances. Status of human vessels, the commander demanded. Still undetected, but these device placements suggest they're implementing a new strategy. The commander studied the tactical display, seeing the pattern emerge. Key structural points throughout the asteroid field, precisely placed. They're weaponizing the environment itself, he realized. Evacuate all vessels from the field immediately. But Commander, his tactical officer protested, standard protocol requires. Ignore protocol. Zyrthal snapped, surprising even himself with the outburst. Execute emergency withdrawal. Now. Lieutenant Sarah Chen moved efficiently through the Defiant's medical bay. checking vital signs on her patients. 8 crew members occupied beds, injuries ranging from plasma burns to fractures sustained during the increasingly aggressive maneuvers the ship had been performing. The medical officer paused beside Ensign Rodriguez, adjusting his pain medication before moving to the next bed. "How are they doing?" Captain Rice asked, entering the medical bay quietly. Chen startled slightly, then composed herself. "Stable. Rodriguez and Petrov will need another day before returning to duty. The others should be cleared by morning." She gestured toward a private area. "Walk with me, Captain." They moved to Chen's office, the door sliding shut behind them. The medical officer's professional composure faltered. "Alina, we can't keep this up," she said, dropping formality. "I've treated 37 injuries in 5 days. The crew is exhausted. Some haven't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since this began." Rice sank into a chair, the weight of command evident in her posture. "I know, Sarah, but what choice do we have?" "I'm not suggesting surrender," Chen clarified, leaning against her desk. "I'm concerned about our tactics. Each engagement becomes more aggressive. The Chaos Torpedo concept was brilliant. Minimal damage, maximum disruption. But this asteroid collision plan could cause actual casualties," Rice finished. "I've thought about that extensively." Chen studied her old friend. They'd served together for 8 years, since the Defiant was still a prototype on Earth's drawing boards. "This isn't like you, Alina. You've always found solutions that minimize harm." "The stakes have changed," Rice said quietly. Atlas translated more of their tactical database. The Concordat has eliminated 17 species they deemed chaotic influences in the past millennium alone. Entire civilizations gone. Chen's eyes widened. Genocide. Based on what? Cultural differences. Based on unpredictability. The Concordat values perfect order above all else. Species that embrace creativity, randomness, individuality. They see them as threats to cosmic harmony. Rice stood, pacing the small office. "If they reach Earth, they won't stop with the Defiant. They'll sterilize the entire planet." A long silence hung between them as Chen processed this information. "I still don't like it," the doctor finally said. "But I understand the necessity." She straightened, doctor mode returning. "At least let me examine you before this boarding mission. You've been showing signs of fatigue." "No time," Rice replied, checking her chronometer. "The team deploys in 30 minutes. 10 minutes, Chen insisted, "or I declare you medically unfit for command." Rice smiled tiredly. "That's mutiny, doctor. It's medicine. And my duty." In his private chamber aboard the Eternal Justice, Commander Zuerthal reviewed holographic projections of the disabled Concordat vessels. His exoskeleton clicked softly as he moved around the displays, 4 eyes focusing independently on different aspects of the damage. "Unprecedented," he muttered to himself. "Completely unprecedented." The door chimed, and Sub-Commander Krenlo entered, mandibles tight with anxiety. "Commander, the Council is demanding answers. 7 ships disabled in less than a solar cycle. They're questioning my competence," Zyrthal finished calmly. "I'm aware. With respect, Commander, our tactics are failing. These humans employ methods that defy all strategic models." Zyrthal turned all 4 eyes toward his subordinate. "You believe you could do better?" Krenlo hesitated, sensing danger. I merely suggest we consider unorthodox responses." "Unorthodox," Zyrthal repeated, tasting the alien concept. "You propose we fight chaos with chaos. Become like them." "Not exactly," Krenlo clarified hastily. "But our perfect formations, our standardized responses, they're anticipating them. Perhaps more. Flexibility is required." The commander stared at his second-in-command for a long moment. In 900 years of service, he had never deviated from Concordat tactical doctrine. The very suggestion felt like heresy. "Show me," he finally said. Krenlo approached the holographic display, manipulating the projected fleet formations into scattered, asymmetrical patterns, randomized patrol routes, varying communications frequencies, unpredictable scan patterns. Deliberate inefficiency, Zyrthel observed, mandibles clicking in disapproval. Tactical adaptation, Krenlo countered carefully. Before the commander could respond, the chamber's alert system pulsed with urgent light. "Report," Zyrthel commanded, activating the communication channel. "Commander," came the tactical officer's voice, "we're detecting unusual energy readings throughout the asteroid field. Multiple points showing thermal signatures consistent with explosive devices." Zyrthel and Krenlo exchanged glances. "Status of human vessels," the commander demanded. "Still undetected, but these device placements suggest they're implementing a new strategy." The commander studied the tactical display, seeing the pattern emerge, key structural points throughout the asteroid field, precisely placed. "They're weaponizing the environment itself," he realized. "Evacuate all vessels from the field immediately." "But, Commander," his tactical officer protested, "standard protocol requires." "Ignore protocol," Zyrthel snapped, surprising even himself with the outburst. "Execute emergency withdrawal. Now." Communications Officer Lai's fingers danced across her console, crafting digital forgeries of Concordat command codes. Beside her, Atlas projected a three-dimensional representation of the Concordat communications network, a complex web of light pulses that shifted and adapted as Lai's work progressed. "How long until they detect the infiltration?" Captain Rice asked, watching from behind Lai's station. "Impossible to say," Lai replied without looking up. "Their systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they're not designed to detect deception. Only errors and anomalies. As long as our forgeries maintain perfect Concordat syntax and encryption. They won't be looking for lies from within their own network," Rice finished. "Excellent work, Lieutenant." Lai finally looked up, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "The falsified orders are ready for transmission. 3 different command packages, each appearing to come from Concordat High Command." "Show me," Rice said. Lai gestured to her screen where 3 message packets awaited deployment. Package Alpha orders the Vigilance and Harmony to investigate a radiation anomaly in Sector 9, directly through the heart of our prepared asteroid field. Package Beta commands the Righteous Path to break formation and pursue a phantom energy signature we'll generate with modified probes. Package Gamma informs Commander Zyrthel that 2 of his ships may be compromised by human infiltration technology. Sowing confusion and distrust, Rice nodded appreciatively. "When can we deploy?" "The network is most vulnerable during their scheduled synchronization burst in 17 minutes. "Make it happen," Rice ordered. "I'll be in engineering." Deep in the Defiance engineering section, Chief Yamamoto supervised the final modifications to the quantum drive. The massive engine core pulsed with blue-white energy, its geometry subtly altered from the original Earth design. "You're certain this will work?" Rice asked as she entered. Yamamoto looked up from his calculations. "Theoretically, yes. In practice," he shrugged, "we're rewriting the laws of physics as we understand them. The drive was never designed to create localized quantum distortions. But it will get us to the eternal justice." Rice pressed. "It should generate a single, short-range jump that will place us within 50 meters of the flagship's command section." Yamamoto confirmed. "After that, the drive will burn out completely. There will be no jumping home." Rice studied the modified engine silently. The implications were clear. This would be a one-way trip for the Defiant. "How many of the crew know?" she asked quietly. "Just the senior engineers," Yamamoto replied. "And now you." Rice nodded slowly. "Keep it that way for now. I'll address the crew when the time comes." The ship's intercom activated. "Captain to the bridge," came Navigator Okoro's urgent voice. "The Concordat fleet is moving." On the bridge, Rice found her officers watching the main view screen with expressions of disbelief. The display showed the Concordat fleet executing a chaotic withdrawal from the asteroid field, ships moving in seemingly random patterns rather than their usual perfect formation. What happened? Rice demanded. Lai hasn't deployed the false orders yet. They detected our explosive charges, Diaz explained. But this response, it's not consistent with their previous tactics. Atlas appeared beside the tactical station. Captain, I'm detecting unusual command patterns in their fleet movements. They appear to be abandoning standard Concordat protocols. They're adapting, Rise realized, a chill running down her spine. Learning from us. Should we detonate the charges anyway? Weapons Officer Parker asked. Ray studied the fleet movements carefully. Most Concordat vessels were withdrawing, but the Eternal Justice remained at the edge of the field, holding position with a small protective escort. No, she decided. They're expecting that now. We need to preserve the element of surprise. Captain, Lai called from her station. I'm intercepting internal communications from the Concordat flagship. Commander Zurathal is facing significant opposition from his officers. Some are demanding he relinquish command for failing to neutralize us. Their command structure is fracturing, Diaz observed. Exactly what we wanted. Not exactly, Rice corrected, studying the tactical display with growing concern. We wanted them confused and divided, yes, but now Zurathal's being pushed into a corner. Why is that a problem? Parker asked. Isn't internal conflict to our advantage? Not necessarily, Rice explained. A commander with nothing to lose becomes unpredictable. If Zirathal faces removal for failure, he might resort to extreme measures to destroy us quickly. Lai's console beeped with a priority alert. Captain, new communication intercepted. The Concordat High Council has issued direct orders to Commander Zirathal. Her expression grew grim as she read the translation. They're authorizing the use of a quantum resonance weapon against the asteroid field. What does that mean? Okoro asked. Atlas projected a simulation in the center of the bridge. A quantum resonance weapon destabilizes matter at the subatomic level, if deployed against the asteroid field. The simulation showed the entire field collapsing into itself, creating a cascading wave of destruction that would atomize everything within a 1,000,000-kilometer radius. They'd destroy their own ships still in the field, Diaz said incredulously. At acceptable loss to them, if it means eliminating us, Rice concluded. She straightened. Decision made. How soon will they deploy the weapon? Approximately 6 hours, Lai replied. They need to bring it online and position the flagship correctly. Then we have 6 hours to execute our final plan, Rice said. Lai, transmit the false orders immediately. Let's create as much chaos as possible. Yamamoto, prepare the quantum drive for our jump to the Eternal Justice. She turned to face her bridge crew. It's time to end this, one way or another. All hands, this is the captain. Reyes's voice echoed through every compartment of the Defiant. In the mess hall, off-duty crew members paused mid-bite. In engineering, technicians looked up from their stations. In the medical bay, Lieutenant Chen and her patients listened intently. In 30 minutes, we will execute our final operation against the Concordat flagship. Our mission, prevent the deployment of a quantum resonance weapon capable of destroying the entire asteroid field. Rice paused, weighing her next words carefully. I won't lie to you. This is a high-risk operation, with limited extraction options. Throughout the ship, crew members exchanged glances, understanding the unspoken truth. Each of you has performed beyond every expectation since this conflict began. What we've accomplished, a single vessel against an entire fleet, has never been done before. When Earth sent us on this mission, they chose the name Defiant for this ship. In these past days, we've given new meaning to that name. In engineering, Yamamoto closed his eyes briefly, knowing what the modified quantum drive would cost them. Some of you have asked why we don't attempt to flee, to warn Earth about the Concordat threat. The answer is simple: we can't outrun them, and leading them to our home would doom billions. Our stand here Now is humanity's best chance. On the bridge, Navigator Okoro quietly recorded a final message to his family. Tucking it into a data crystal he hoped might somehow survive. For those with loved ones at home, I understand your sacrifice. History may never know what happened here, I do. And I am honored to serve with each of you. Reyes's voice softened slightly. Prepare for final jump sequence. Battle stations. Captain out. As the announcement ended, the ship hummed with activity. Crew members moving to stations, checking systems, preparing weapons. The mess hall emptied, the corridors filled with purposeful movement, and a strange calm settled over the Defiant. On the bridge, Reyes found her senior officers waiting. No one spoke of what they all knew, that the quantum drive modification was a one-way trip. Status report, she ordered, taking her seat in the command chair. Lai has deployed all 3 false order packages, Dias reported. Concordat fleet communications show considerable confusion. At least 4 vessels have broken formation to investigate our phantom signals. The flagship, still preparing the quantum resonance weapon. Their protective screen has thinned. Only 3 escorts remain. Chaos torpedoes. Weapons Officer Parker nodded. 6 remaining, all reconfigured to target the flagship's primary systems. And the quantum drive. Chief Engineer Yamamoto's voice came through the comm. Ready, Captain. The jump calculations are precise. We'll materialize 47 meters from their command deck. But the power requirements... He didn't finish the sentence. Understood, Chief. Stand by. Reyes turned to Atlas, whose holographic form seemed somehow more solemn than usual. Final tactical analysis. The Concordat flagship's defenses are formidable, the AI reported. However, their current configuration suggests they're focusing power on the quantum resonance weapon preparation rather than defensive shields. Our window of opportunity is narrow, approximately 94 seconds from jump completion until their systems can respond effectively. Reyes nodded, absorbing the information. Navigator Okoro, final course plotted. Yes, Captain. Jump coordinates locked. The Eternal Justice won't detect our approach until we're right on top of them. Reyes stood, looking at each bridge officer in turn. I want to be clear about what happens next. We jump directly to the flagship. We deploy all remaining Chaos torpedoes to disable their primary systems. Then Security Chief Dias leads a boarding party to their command deck to neutralize the quantum resonance weapon. She paused. The Defiant will provide covering fire and distraction for as long as possible. No one mentioned that as long as possible might be measured in minutes once the remaining Concordat vessels converged on their position. Any questions? Reyes asked. The bridge remained silent. Then let's make humanity proud. She returned to her command chair. Initiate final countdown. 10 minutes to jump. As the countdown began, Lieutenant Chen entered the bridge, medical kit in hand. Doctor, Reyes acknowledged with surprise. You should be in medical bay. My patients are stable, Chen replied calmly. And I thought the bridge might need a medical officer for this final operation. Reyes understood the gesture. Chen had come to stand with her friends at the end. Very well, the captain nodded. Take the science station. Across the void of space, aboard the Eternal Justice, Commander Zurithal supervised the final calibrations of the quantum resonance weapon. His 4 eyes monitored different displays simultaneously, his posture rigid despite the growing dissent among his officers. Weapon charging at 64%, his weapons officer reported. Estimated time to deployment readiness, 27 minutes. Maintain course, Zyrthal ordered. The human vessels must not escape. Commander, his tactical officer interrupted. Sensors are detecting unusual energy fluctuations in Sector 7. Another human deception. Zyrthal dismissed. Focus on the weapon deployment. The tactical officer hesitated. Sir, the energy signature doesn't match any previous human pattern. It's almost as if. His words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the flagship. The Defiant materialized in a flash of quantum energy, appearing mere meters from the Eternal Justice's command section. The human vessel's sudden proximity triggered cascading alarms throughout the Concordat flagship as its sensor systems struggled to process the impossible. An enemy vessel had bypassed all outer defenses. On the Defiant's bridge, warning lights flashed as systems overloaded from the modified jump. Quantum drive critical failure, Yamamoto reported from engineering, his voice calm despite the chaos. All power rerouting to weapons and shields. Deploy chaos torpedoes, full spread, Rise ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship shuddered beneath her. Target their weapon control systems and engines. Through the view screen, they watched as 6 torpedoes streaked toward the massive Concordat flagship, each finding its mark with perfect precision. The weapons didn't explode with conventional force. Instead, they attached to the alien vessel's hull, boring through to inject their chaotic programming directly into the Concordat systems. Direct hits, Parker confirmed. Concordat systems showing immediate disruption. Boarding party ready, Security Chief Diaz reported, already in full tactical gear at the airlock with her team. Reyes nodded. Execute boarding operation. Atlas, coordinate tactical data with Chief Diaz's team. As the boarding party deployed, the Defiant shuddered under sudden impact. Concordat escort vessels had recovered from their surprise and opened fire. Shields at 47% and falling. Operations reported. Evasive maneuvers, Reyes ordered. Keep their attention on us, not the boarding party. Aboard the Eternal Justice, Commander Zerithal fought to maintain control of his flagship as systems failed in cascading sequence. Holographic displays flickered with contradictory information. Emergency lighting bathed the command deck in pulsing red, and his officers shouted conflicting reports. Weapon control compromised, his tactical officer cried. Quantum resonance initiator destabilizing. Shut it down, Zerithal ordered. Emergency protocols. Systems not responding to commands, another officer reported. Human programming is. His console exploded in a shower of sparks, throwing him backward. The massive blast doors to the command deck suddenly glowed red-hot before exploding inward. Through the smoke and debris emerged Captain Reyes, leading the human boarding party personally, her tactical armor scorched from combat. Zerithal's guards raised weapons, but Reyes was faster. Her team fired with precision, using stun charges that incapacitated the Concordat officers without killing them. Within moments, only Zerithal remained standing, facing the human captain across the ruined command deck. You've lost, Commander, Reyes said, her weapon trained on him. Order your fleet to stand down. Zerithal's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of astonishment in his species. You boarded my flagship, personally. Why would a commanding officer risk herself? Because that's what humans do, Reyes replied simply. We lead from the front. Inefficient. Illogical. Zerithal's mandibles clicked rapidly. You could have simply destroyed us. That wasn't our mission, Reyes countered. Unlike the Concordat, we don't eliminate what we don't understand. A distant explosion rocked the flagship. Through the massive viewport, they could see the Defiant engaged with 3 Concordat vessels, its shields failing, hull breaches visible along its port side. Your ship is dying, Zerithal observed. My crew knew the cost, Reyes said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. They chose to pay it to protect Earth and every other species that doesn't fit your definition of order. Something unexpected flickered across Zerithal's alien features, understanding, perhaps even respect. In 900 years of service, the commander said quietly, I have never encountered a species willing to sacrifice everything for others they've never met. That's humanity's greatest strength, Reyes replied. Not our technology or our weapons, our empathy. Our willingness to fight for what's right, even when it costs us everything. Zerithal moved slowly to a central console, his movements deliberate to avoid alarming the human boarding party. With 4 precise gestures, he activated a communication channel to all Concordat vessels. "This is Commander Zerthal. Cease fire immediately. The human vessel is not to be destroyed." He turned back to Reyes. "I wish to understand." 3 days later, Captain Reyes stood in the Eternal Justice's great archive chamber, surrounded by holographic records of thousands of civilizations the Concordat had encountered, some thriving in alliance with them, others marked as eliminated threats. Commander Zerthal joined her, his movements more fluid than before, less rigidly geometric. "The treaty is prepared," he announced. "The Concordat Council has accepted my recommendation. Earth will be recognized as sovereign territory, protected from interference." "And the other species you deemed chaotic?" Reyes pressed. "That classification is under review," Zerthal admitted. "Your actions have forced us to reconsider much of our fundamental doctrine." Reyes nodded, then gazed out the viewport where the Defiant floated alongside the massive flagship, damaged but intact, undergoing repairs by both human and Concordat engineers working together. "You could have destroyed us once you had control of our systems," Zerthal observed. "Instead, you chose to communicate, to understand. Perhaps chaos and order are not as incompatible as we believed." "The universe needs both," Reyes replied. "Structure and spontaneity, rules and creativity." She smiled slightly. "Perhaps that's why our ships found each other." As the Defiant's crew prepared for their long journey home, they carried not just a treaty ensuring Earth's safety, but something far more valuable, the beginning of understanding between 2 fundamentally different ways of thinking. The battle they never expected had ended not with annihilation, but with the hardest victory of all: peace.